So we have an update on Heath and his injury status after suffering an injury this past Saturday at the Impact Wrestling Bound for Glory pay-per-view. Now, as I mentioned, Heath was injured during Saturday's Call Your Shot Battle Royal Gauntlet at Impact Wrestling Bound for Glory. Now, Heath entered the match, quickly eliminated AC Romero, and then turned around and took what looked like a kick to the midsection area from former WWE Superstar Brian Myers, which looks to be when he appeared to get hurt. I think also he did a big kick and it looks like he got an injury there as well. It's difficult to pinpoint the area of when he did get injured because it happened so quickly. He entered the match and pretty much got injured straight away. Now, Heath was able to eliminate Myers, but then he stayed down on the mat for a few minutes shortly after that. He then made his way to the corner and talked with the referee for the majority of the match. There was obviously something wrong going on during that period. Actually, if you go back and watch the watch-along, we did a watch-along for Bound for Glory, it's on the channel, you could tell with my reaction immediately. I went, something's wrong, because he stayed down, he didn't do his spots, and the referees were immediately talking to him. People were communicating with various personnel at ringside. Something was going wrong. Now, Heath ended up being in the final four of the match alongside Rhino, Sami Callihan and James Storm, but ultimately Heath's tag team partner Rhino won the match, which meant that not only Rhino got a future championship opportunity, we don't know what title yet, maybe, that he's going after, but Heath is now a full-time member of the Impact Wrestling roster after securing a contract via Rhino's victory in the match. Now, after the match, Heath left the Skyway Studios there in Nashville, Tennessee to get some medical attention. He showed the picture on social media. He tweeted out, quote, "This sucks, I'm sorry to everyone," end quote. But he also said to follow that up, quote, "But big thanks to Rhino, Impact Wrestling, hashtag Bound for Glory 2020. Now, it was previously reported by PW Insider that the injury was believed to be an abdomen or groin tear. Now, as I mentioned, that report came out from PW Insider that it was potentially a groin or abdomen tear, but it has been updated by Figure 4 Wrestling Online that has reported that Heath actually suffered a hernia and not a groin tear during the match. Heath was later hospitalized and diagnosed after Bound for Glory, but encouragingly, he was able to make it back to his hotel during the night. Ultimately, as I mentioned, his tag team partner Rhino won the Battle Royal, which means he and Heath are now full-time members of the Impact Wrestling roster, and Rhino has a future championship opportunity. But what's interesting about this injury is that because of the injury to Heath, Impact Wrestling were forced to change the finish of that Call Your Shot Gauntlet on the fly. Whilst they were live on the air, they had to call an audible and change the match's ending. PW Insider, who originally reported the injury, they also reported that Slater, Heath, got hurt during the early stages of the match, and that Heath was supposed to win the match to earn a contract with Impact, but instead, due to the injury, Rhino secured the contract for the former WWE Superstar following an audible called by Impact Wrestling. Now, this is what the report said by PW Insider. It said, quote, "Heath Miller was originally slated to win the Call Your Shot Gauntlet Battle Royal at last night's Bound for Glory pay-per-view. PWInsider.com has confirmed Miller, who was injured earlier on into his run in the match, was originally slated to defeat Sami Callihan to win the match and earn an Impact contract. Due to the injury issue, an audible was called that saw Rhino instead go over to secure Miller the contract. Miller was hospitalized last night and apologized to the fans via Twitter for the injury. There is no word yet on what the official diagnosis is or how long he will be out." So, as I mentioned, the diagnosis that we have heard and that has been reported is that it was a hernia, not a groin tear or an abdomen tear. But we expected to get some more details about this injury to Heath on Impact Wrestling last night, and once again, we didn't really. It was kind of murky, Impact being very coy on the situation. They said, quote, "During Impact Wrestling last night, we had Gia Miller congratulate Rhino on winning the Call Your Shot Gauntlet at Bound for Glory and awarding him a title shot for his choosing, as well in addition to securing an Impact Wrestling contract for his tag team partner and best friend Heath." Now, Rhino stated that he plans on challenging for the tag team championships alongside his friend Heath, but there are rumours, and they mentioned this on the programme, that Heath sustained an injury during the gauntlet and he doesn't want that to affect his big money deal that Scott D'Amore has agreed to sign as per the stipulations of the match. So very vague and very coy on this whole situation when it comes to the Heath injury. I think most likely they're being very vague and they're very coy about Heath's injury here, because quite frankly they don't actually know the severity of the injury yet. Yes, they may have a diagnosis, but they don't know how long Heath is going to be out. Can he work through it? Can he be back in a couple of weeks, or is he going to be on the shelf for a couple of months? I think you have to look at the positives from this, even though there aren't many. The positive here is that Heath was able to make it back to his hotel room. That is promising. And if it is a hernia, like it's being reported, hernias can be very, very strange when it comes to professional wrestling, because they can really range from pole to pole in terms of severity. Now, eventually, when it comes to things like hernias, he will have to get it fixed. There's no doubt about that. He will eventually have to get it fixed, most likely by surgery. But you have multiple wrestlers, and multiple wrestlers will come out and say this, that they can regularly compete with hernias because the severity is so small, or it's very manageable, or in fact it doesn't hurt. It's just they know they have a hernia and maybe the movement is just limited, but it doesn't hurt and they can compete on it. Some hernias, though, on the other end of the scale are incredibly severe. They require immediate surgery and they leave a performer in excruciating pain. I think about Roman Reigns had a very, very severe hernia back in, when was that, 2014? Around that period of time, he had a hernia so bad it was actually pushing into, it was like the wall of his intestines or something like that. It was horrendous. Then on the other end of the scale, you can have them where they're just there and they don't hurt at all. So it's very, I think this is why it's been very coy on terms of impacts, and because they're not too sure what the severity is right now. What I will say is when Heath sustained the injury during the match at Bound for Glory on Saturday, it looked like he could barely stand up. He was on the mat for the majority of the match, getting spoken to by referees and officials, trying to figure out what was going on. So that doesn't look good. I would suspect right now, Impact and Heath are trying to figure out the severity on this. Do we need surgery? Can we rehab this? Will it be okay? Can we get through the storyline? What's the situation? What's the lay of the land right now? So I think that's why they're taking their time on this. In the grand scheme of things, look, this injury, like any injury, but especially on the case of Heath, it sucks. It really does suck. The entirety of that gauntlet match, the entirety of the way that match was put together, the stipulations of that match, it was all about Heath. It was all about Heath's storyline in Impact Wrestling. The storyline going in, Rhino being the first entrant, Rhino putting his job on the line, all of it was around this Heath story and can he get on the Impact Wrestling roster. And you look at the way that Heath entered the match, he pretty much got hurt immediately. And honestly, when I say immediately, it must have been 10-15 seconds into the match. It was pretty much immediate that he got hurt as soon as he went into the match, and that really does suck. That really does suck, because all of this hard work, all of the promos, the vignettes, the storyline from July when he made his debut all the way to October at Bound for Glory this past Saturday, and then your big moment comes and you get injured straight away. That is so unlucky. That is so unfortunate, and it's a really bad situation. It really is. Now let's just hope it hopefully isn't as bad as it looked on Saturday, and Heath can return in some capacity very, very soon. I still think, in my opinion, and I've made a few videos about this when it comes to Heath and this storyline in Impact Wrestling, I still think the end game here is to have Heath turn on Rhino and become a heel. And given that switch, that audible was made at Saturday at Bound for Glory for Rhino to win the match, maybe the plans when it comes to a potential heel turn, that I'm just assuming here, I'm trying to read the lay of the land, maybe those plans have been altered. Because if Heath won the match, he could obviously challenge for any title that he wished. Now, the switch was made to Rhino. Rhino won the match. Obviously, plans have had to change there. I still think eventually we will get to Heath turning on Rhino. And I think Heath will become a more serious character, a main eventer, and enter that World Championship scene at the top of the card. But obviously they've got to find a different route to do this now. They've got to go down a different road than just Heath turning on Rhino during the match at Bound for Glory. They've got to do this sometime down the line, and they've got to find a different way to tell this story. I think instead of that turn happening at Bound for Glory this past weekend, I think a potential Heath heel turn now happens during their tag team title match instead, whenever that happens. Rhino said it on Impact last night, that the championship he's challenging for is the tag team championship along with Heath whenever they can. So I think that big heel turn, if it happens, again, this is just my speculation at this point, I haven't heard anything or read anything about this, but I think if that turn does happen, I think that's happening during the tag team title match now instead. And maybe that was the plan. Maybe the plan always was not to do the turn at Bound for Glory. Maybe the plan was to do the turn during the tag team title match if Heath won the tag team titles. We'll have to wait and see. But look, ultimately, when it comes to this Heath situation, it's a really, really frustrating situation for Heath. Ultimately, that's what it is. And I've gone on record a couple of times when I've been speaking about this storyline that they've been doing for Heath in Impact that I haven't been the biggest fan of rehashing the WWE 2016 Heath Slater's a free agent storyline. I thought Impact could have done something better than that. But putting that all out the window, nevertheless, this is a guy that I do think can be a world champion in Impact Wrestling. This is a guy that I think can do massive things in Impact Wrestling. And this was and still is, for me, just the beginning of Heath in Impact. So hopefully he can recover soon, and hopefully he can get back to it being in the ring soon, because I think he is such an asset. He is such an asset to the Impact Wrestling roster, and I do think this is a guy, even though he's been in the business for over 10 years, he was in WWE for over 10 years, been in the business obviously longer than that, I think there is so much he can still do. I think there is so much he can still do and so much he can still contribute, and if they do have Heath on the sidelines for a long period of time, that's going to hurt them. That is going to hurt them because he's a big star. He's obviously, I would assume, on a decent contract. He's a former WWE Superstar, recognizable name, good on the mic, can work in the ring, can be put into any role, whether that is comedic, which I would want to see less of, to be honest. But he can be put into that comedic role. He can be put in the main event scene. He can be put in the tag team with Rhino as well. There is so much he can do that I just feel him being on the sideline, it really hurts Impact. It really does. So hopefully we find out soon what the severity is of this injury when it comes to Heath. As I mentioned, I think Impact are playing it very coy because I think they're trying to figure out what's going on right now when it comes to Heath and that injury. So hopefully we'll find out more details soon. I'm sure we will. But until then, we just have to hope that it's not too serious when it comes to Heath's injury with Impact Wrestling. But what are your thoughts on the potential Heath injury that he sustained at Bound for Glory? What do you think the future storylines will be with Heath and Rhino? Do you think we're going to a heel turn? Do you think Rhino's going to stretch this out? Do you think Impact are going to stretch this out by potentially not getting the contract to Heath because he's injured? There's lots of different ways to do it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys and chatting about Impact Wrestling here on the channel. Good, bad or indifferent, all opinions are welcome here at Wrestle News 365, so be sure to leave a comment below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really just helps out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. We're doing daily Impact Wrestling videos at this point and watch alongs and all that fun stuff, so be sure to click that subscribe button and make sure you click that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever we do a live stream or an Impact Wrestling video goes up. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.